Hello and welcome to the channel. It's been a little while since I've done a video, but I'm back. Oh, we're so back. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about James Blake. Big fan of James Blake's music. He's been on the internet a lot this week. He's got a new album out. And he's been talking a lot about the state of the music industry, as a lot of these people do now. A lot of the music industry is so corrupt. Everything's so bad. Everyone's so evil. These record labels are so evil. By the way, please buy my album. So yeah, he's been on the internet a lot this week. And he's been talking a lot about the unfairness of the music industry in the way that it's set up, right?
Kind of declaration of independence from the music industry. Why?
I was becoming more and more sick of being sort of left on the shelf by my label, basically, and like basically my art not being honoured. I think that's really what we all want as musicians: is your art being honoured or not? And also realising that I'd mostly been just paying other people's bills for the last 6-7 years.
How much stuff is left on the cutting room floor?
If I think about that, I'll probably cry on camera. So there's at least 3 albums with people who are few of my favourite artists of all time.
Okay, so those are the 2 main interviews that he's done this week. And I would recommend you watch them in full, but the gist of what he's saying is it's a lot to do with the major label or the label system is broken, and he has issued a kind of declaration of independence for the music industry, and he thinks that all artists should be independent and no artists don't need record labels, and record labels just suck blood. That's all they do. So to give you a bit of context in what the music industry is now, the music industry is up. The music industry as a whole is up 4.8% in 2024. Streaming, i.e. Spotify and Apple Music, accounts for around 60% of that. Wholesale revenue, i.e. sales of albums, vinyls and things like that, is at 11.5 billion. That's the highest it's been ever, I think. So the music industry is strong at the moment. It's in a good place. But a lot of artists would tell you that that's not being felt in the pockets of musicians as such. And that's a fair comment. What I would say about this interview is that nothing is binary, right? I don't think it's always the artist's fault or it's always the label's fault, these things happening, right? There's a lot of nuance probably involved here that you're not seeing the full extent of. And the label and management and the wider industry never gets right of reply when artists do these interviews, right? So one of the things that James Blake talks about in this interview is that his albums and his music was being left on the shelf. And what that would suggest is that it's not being put out, or it's being, he's being ignored by the label and nobody's doing anything with him, right? But he has left some things out there because James Blake released albums in all of these years. 2011, 2013, 2016, 2019, 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024. That's 8 albums in 15 years. I would say that actually does represent quite a normal album release cycle, right? It's sort of one every 18 months. So he is releasing music. So is he potentially upset about the lack of support that these albums got? Now, he's had a number of really, really big albums. The Colour in Everything, I think it's called. He had a self-titled album that did very well. He's had a couple that were really, really big, kind of maybe about 10 years ago. So maybe his gripe is that the more recent albums that he's done haven't, in his view, received the promotion that they should have done. And that's fair. That might be the case, but equally, that is the deal you make when you sign with a record label. It is that you're both in this together, but you both take the risk together. I'm sure the record label aren't particularly pleased if an album didn't do very well. You both are accountable for that. The other thing he mentions is that he feels like what most of his work has been paying other people's wages. Now this, to be honest, this is something that I have got to call him out on a little bit, because I'm sorry, but that is how every industry in the world works. What happens is the creative or the artist produces a product. That product is sold and marketed at scale to the best of the ability of, the brand or the record label in this case. And then once expenses have been recouped, there's then a profit share. It's the same in the film industry. It's the same in the publishing industry. Unfortunately, if you want the benefits of working with major label Universal, which he was on, then you do have to accept that, the promo people at the label need to get paid. Advertising needs to get paid. The people who do your artwork need to get paid. The people who shoot your music video need to get paid. If you want to be truly, truly independent, then you could do that, right? You could decide how people get paid and you run your own ship. But the deal you make when you sign away your masters and you sign with a record label is that they are going to have autonomy to pay for things in order to market your record. And they will account those against the profit of the record. That's what happens. And that would have been in the deal from the start. I mean, he does say that he's accountable for these things, but I don't like that it's always, you only get the artist side of this, whereas all of this would have been in a contract, and contracts have to mean something. So I really don't like the suggestion that other people in the industry shouldn't have got paid off the success of his music, because they are a part of that success. At some point in his journey, an A&R or someone at a management company or someone at a record label would have took a punt on James Blake. They would have said, wow, he's interesting, super experimental, super out there, super weird, beautiful music. We should take a bit of a punt on it. And they would have took all the risk at that point. So when Universal or whoever signed that first album or signed those first couple of songs, they were taking all the risk because they'd have put money into it with no real guarantee of how well it's going to do. So that's why later on, when James Blake becomes a really, really big artist, they still have a slice of that pie and they then recoup. It's the same in every industry in the world. I also do resent this idea that all artists should be independent, because that's just not true. That's true for some artists. It's true for some artists who want to be fully in control of their journey and want to be the captain of their ship and want to do all of that stuff. But a lot of artists don't. A lot of artists, they want to just make music. They want to do the creative stuff that they love doing. And that's also fine. That's why you work with a record label who will handle all of that side of things, right? So, in short, I do have sympathy for anyone who's on a bad deal or anyone who feels exploited by the wider music industry. I do. But equally, there are lots of options out there now that mean you don't have to do that. And they're not hard to find. So if you want to be independent, but don't sign with what is obviously a big international conglomerate like UMG and then complain that you're not being treated particularly fairly. Because what did you expect to a certain degree?